So how about we talk about trees today? Why not, right? Why not? You know there's somebody out there in the audience that is a dedicated tree scientist, right? An arborist, a tree surgeon. There's somebody out there in the audience, there's bound to be, that decided to dedicate their entire lives to not just the field of botany, but trees specifically. They're like, yeah, I love trees! I'm gonna go to school to learn all I can about trees, and I'm gonna learn how to protect the trees and take care of the sick trees. And then they're also watching my channel because they also happen to be fans of One Piece. Now, there's probably not a huge, Venn diagram intersection there of people that are obsessed with trees and also the people that watch One Piece, but I'm sure they're there, right? And so they're just like, you know what? I want teching, man. I just wish my life would be complete if he just made a video about the trees of the One Piece world. Well, we're here today, all right? So hello, everyone out there. We're talking about the trees of the One Piece world, specifically the treasure tree Adam and the sunlight tree Eve. There are some other trees in One Piece. There's actually quite a few. If you actually stop and think, there's Adam and Eve, but then there's also the tree on Ohara, the tree of knowledge, which, fun fact, is actually the oldest thing in all of One Piece that we know of. It was actually stated to be over 5,000 years old, which when it was planted, which is the furthest back that any timeline date was given in One Piece. Okay, so that's the tree of knowledge. There's the whale tree, a tree that's shaped specifically like a whale. You're kind of curious, you kind of back up and say, well, it's manga, it's anime, but really, how the hell does that happen? I guess it was sculpted, but by whom? That's probably going to tie back into the whole history involving Zou and the promise that Zunisha broke, which is forcing it to walk the ends of the earth, right? Unironically, I must say, trees may be the secret to unlocking the Void Century. It's the one angle nobody looks at, all right? It's just like, yeah, there's trees in the One Piece world. There's a really, really old tree. The sunny is made out of its wood. Okay, great. That's fantastic, right? It's just lumber, right? No, 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 no. These trees are going to be the secret to unlocking the Void Century and Joy Boy and the Promise. What is the Noah made out of? I repeat, what is the Noah made out of? Okay? Made out of wood, right? Where'd the wood come from? Okay, yeah, so there you go. And I will say, just also completely unironically, trees are actually pretty fascinating. I mean, they really are, right? There are some old trees that exist in the world. Let me tell you a story. When I was in 5th grade, we went on like a bike trip. For my school. We got a bunch of, bikes, and we went on this, like, nature trail kind of thing. It was nice. It was, like, a nice day where we didn't spend inside the classroom when we got to ride on this, like, trail or whatever. And I remember at one point during the nature ride, we stopped, and our teacher, who was, like, this, like, naturalist nature professor guy that would come to our school every now and then and teach us about plants. I just liked it because I got to go outside whenever he showed up. But anyway, so he showed up and he stopped us, and he was like, hey, that tree over there next to that that little creek down there on the hillside, that tree is confirmed to be like from the 15th century. Okay, and I always remember thinking that was pretty fascinating. Like, that tree right there that I'm looking at that's growing in my area has been here for, like, over 500 years. That's pretty cool, right? And in One Piece, certainly, things that stretch back as far as the Void Century or beyond, the trees might very well, literally, the Tree of Knowledge was a tree that held all the secrets of the world. But it's burned down now, so we're not going to get that back, but who knows? Maybe there'll be a little seed of the Tree of Knowledge that Robin will find and plant in a new Ohara as the story ends or something like that. So trees are pretty fascinating. Do you know what the oldest trees are in the world? I'll tell you. They're bristlecone pines, and the oldest one right now is a tree called Methuselah that's growing in California. It is over 4,800 years old, and we don't know where it's located because they won't give you an exact location because they're trying to protect it. There was another tree named Prometheus from, it's also a bristlecone pine that was in Nevada, and that one was over 4,900 years old, but that was actually cut down in the 1970s, I believe. So that sucks. But at any rate, yeah, so those are some old trees just in our world. There's probably, hey, you could be the one. You could go out there in the world and you could find a tree that's even older than that. All right, so there you go. There's your lifetime goal. Find an old tree. Yes. All right. So let me tell you a story. Let me regale you with a tale of past events that totally happened. At least in the One Piece story, they happened. Once upon a time, there was an island racked by war. Fires burned down every town on the island, and the people fled in fear and terror. However, there was one mighty tree that stood strong against this destruction, and that was known as the treasure tree, Adam. No matter what bombardment occurred on the island, the tree never fell. And after the war ended, the people returned to the island and built their homes back up under the shade of this mighty tree. And then, maybe a few hundred years later, a cyborg bought some wood from it and made a ship with a lion figurehead that also looks like a sunflower. But it's going to sail to the ends of the earth! It's also the place, it's also the tree where the Oro Jackson got its material from that Tom used to build Roger's ship, so that's kind of important. Now, that story that I just told you was a story that Frankie gave. Now Frankie is not a historian or anything. He used to be a shipwright and then a dismantler and now a shipwright again, so he's not, like, well-versed in the history of the One Piece world. This was probably just a story that Tom told him offhandedly when he was growing up. Tom probably told him this really quick story about there's this really badass tree that won't break, it won't bend, it won't fall down no matter what, and that's where you get the best wood, the best lumber, the best building material. You can't do better than the treasure tree of Adam. Alright, now, we don't know where this tree is located, but I'm going to assume either one of two things. This tree, the lumber of it, showed up on the black market, and that's actually what Frankie used the money he stole from Usopp, the 200 million berries, to buy. So at the end of the day, it was kind of sucky that, they took all this gold from Skypiea, and they got 300 million, and they couldn't spend it because the Frankie family stole it. But at the end of the day, you see how Oda did that. Frankie bought the lumber, which he ended up using to build the Sunny, and then Frankie joined the Straw Hats, and then so there he goes. The money ended up, paying for the Sunny regardless. So that was pretty cool, right? But where did Frankie get that lumber? Yes, I know he said he got it on the black market, but if there's only like one tree in the One Piece world that provides this lumber, then it's either got to be very, very big, or there isn't just one of them. There's got to be more of them, right? So I like to go with the idea that there is just one of these treasure tree atoms that exist in the world, and the reason I say that is because the Sunlight Tree Eve, which, as you can tell, Adam and Eve is like the other side of that, another tree that's related to it. There's only one of those that exist in the world. One mighty tree that branches off, and that's where, like, the Sabaody Archipelago comes into existence, and all the bubble trees that exist on the surface, and, so it all comes from, like, one major tree, just the one tree system, the trunk, and then it splinters out like that. I would assume the treasure tree Adam is very much like that. Somewhere in the One Piece world, there is a giant tree growing on land, rather in the ocean, like Eve does, and every now and then, somebody, probably in a legal practice, will, take some wood off of that tree and then put it on the black market, and Frankie said it doesn't come up very often, but whenever it does, and I have the money, I'm going to get some, and that's what happened with, when they got the money from the Straw Hats from Usopp, and that's what Frankie used to buy it for, okay? Now, let me think for a moment. Giant tree somewhere in the One Piece world, and it's got to be on land, right? Okay. I don't know. I can't think of anything. I mean, yeah, there was Ohara, but that one got burned down. And there's the whale tree at Zoe. I mean, other than Elbaf with the Yggdrasil, I can't imagine. Oh my god! So yes, on Elbaf, there just happens to be a giant tree. You can see it off to the side here. Probably what Oda is going for in terms of the reference there is Yggdrasil, the world tree, the tree that's from Norse mythology. But in the context of One Piece, it may very well be Treasure Tree Adam. It's this giant tree that exists in the Land of Giants, and I'm going to assume that the Land of Giants is not allied with the world government. I mean, I guess they kind of are and they kind of aren't. See, the thing is, there are giants that work for the government, like John Giant and the Giant Squad, of course. But as Jaguar D. Saul stated, also during the Ohara flashback, not all giants come from Elbaf. Not all giants, originate from there. Maybe their ancestry, all giants eventually, came from Elbaf if you trace their ancestry back far enough, but not all giants come from there. Alright, so there could have been other giants that grew up or maybe left Elbaf at a young age and that eventually joined the Marines. But just because there's giants that join the Marines does not mean Elbaf as a kingdom allies with the world government, okay? That's not the same thing, okay? And in Jaguar D. Saul's case, he definitely wasn't from Elbaf. He came from somewhere else, okay? So I'm going to assume it's not. It's its own kind of sovereign nation there, similar to Wano. And, just like Wano. The world government really can't take it over because it's a nation full of giants and they will wreck you, you know, so it's like, gotta be careful with that. But if that's the situation, maybe every now and then pirates land on the island, or, you know, maybe there's some giants that aren't really, that like, oh, that's the Great World Tree, Yggdrasil. It's just like, that's cool, I bet we could get some money for this stuff, you know? It's just like, so every now and then somebody will pilfer some lumber, some building material from Yggdrasil or the Treasure Tree Atom, if that's in case what it is, and then put it on the black market, and it'll get shipped all over the world, and that's how Frankie ended up getting it. But it doesn't happen very often, okay? But it does occur. I find that more easy to believe that there's just one giant tree atom than multiple trees growing all over the world, okay? Now, with Eve, and kind of moving on to that, the sunlight tree Eve, it makes a little bit more sense given the nature of that tree. So that's like a mangrove tree, all right? And if you look at these pictures of what mangroves are all about, they grow in like marshes and swamplands and things like that, and their roots kind of like branch out at the bottom. I guess all roots kind of branch out. That's kind of a point of a root, but you know what I mean. Like here in the water, it kind of branches all out to kind of absorb all the nutrients and everything from the surrounding marshland and everything. Okay, cool. So imagine if, okay, right here, I'll just throw some pictures up there for visual reference. We got the red line in the center, we got the Grand Line right there, we got the ocean, we got G1, which used to be Marineford, and then we have Marine HQ right now, which is located in the New World. We got the two red ports, and we got the Sabaody Archipelago, and we got Fishman Island way there at the bottom in the hole, at the bottom of the red line. Now, keep in mind, Sabaody Archipelago is not the only place where these bubble trees, these hustle-muscle mangrove trees exist. We also see them at the red ports, and we also see them at not G1, well, the former G1, the current Marine HQ. We also see bubbles in their locations as well. So I imagine the sunlight tree Eve, what if it actually grows through the center of the red line? Like, literally, it grows straight up. Because that's the weird thing. Like, Fishman Island is located in this hole, like, in the red line. Like, literally in the red line. Like, if you're in Fishman Island and you swim up high enough, you'd hit, like, a ceiling of rock of the red line, right? But there's also a tree down there. So I'm thinking, what if it grows in the center of the red line, and then it branches off like most mangrove trees do, except this one is just massive. And so it branches off, and so you got Fishman Island right there, and then all of the roots are kind of growing around it. And that kind of syncs up to what we see right here. We don't actually have a full, like, view picture of the sunlight tree Eve. It's just simply too big. But we do see an image of Fishman Island here, bathed in sunlight, with a bunch of these roots surrounding it, so that kind of implies that Fishman Island's like right nestled in the center of these roots, and they're just so massive. You know, you can swim, and there's like a lot of like ways to like get through them. Like ships and stuff can travel to and from Fishman Island, and then the trunk of the thing is like literally embedded in the red line, breaking off at random intervals throughout the red line, and then that's where you get the Sabaody Archipelago. That's where you get the red ports. That's where you get all of these mangrove trees sprouting up. They're literally just the tips of this tree's branches. Like the Sabaody Archipelago is just like the twigs of this thing, right? And the Sabaody Archipelago is, I keep saying that really fast, Sabaody Archipelago, Sabaody Archipelago, Sabaody Archipelago. That's a tongue twister. The Sabaody Archipelago is just one of these areas where the twigs and the trees and the branches are all like clustered together in one place. So that's why it kind of forms an archipelago. There might be other random points in the New World where you're just sailing along and you might see only one or two of these branches poking out of the water, and they produce bubble resin, but they're not big enough to actually be an island of themselves, right? The red port is another example of this. We see the trees growing right there, and the climate, as it was stated by Hachi, those bubbles can only exist underwater or in that very specific bubble climate that the Sabaody Archipelago creates, okay? Because it breathes, and then when it breathes, that resin creates bubbles, okay? So that would imply, like, this tree network, at least in that general area right around the red line where Marie-Joie is located, up at the very, very top of that, that entire area there is filled with these different bubble climates, these different trees that are actually the tops of the branches of the sunlight tree Eve. All right, so that's something to keep in mind there. And considering the possibility that the red line might get destroyed by the end of the story, I don't know. If the red line is just pure rock, that would be hard enough. But if there's a tree inside of there, I don't know. Like, the tree just something happens and it grows a lot and the branches break out and there's like, or rather the tree growing in there provides some like choke points, like some cracks in the rock where you could maybe detonate Pluton or something, or do something to break it apart, and then the entire red line collapses, leaving just this tree there to symbolize the hope of the new era or the fall of Marie Joie or anything. Like the whole red line collapses and it's just the tree. The tree might have very well have been there long before the Void Century. Maybe the world government, and I've said this before, maybe the world government did something to artificially craft and create the red line. Like the red line is not a naturally occurring thing. It does seem rather out of place in the world of One Piece. We really haven't seen that red rock anywhere else in the entire world, and it's really the only major continent that exists. Yes, there are some other islands that get pretty big, but the red line is certainly something else altogether. It's an artificial continent, maybe. Also, it's placed in just the right point to divide the world up, to maybe make the world government's control of it a little easier, because geography is everything, of course. So who knows, maybe 1,000 years ago the world was one big ocean and you got islands everywhere, and you had this mighty tree right in the center of it, right where Marie Joie is located right now, and that tree was kind of like to symbolize a new era and hope and prosperity. And then the world government took over and they did some, I don't know, something that they did, and they created the red line around it, and then boom, there you go. Something else to bring up here, and I'll bring this up just because it's fan fiction, but I did reference it when we were talking about the Return to Reverie chapters that Artor and Gemini worked on, those big fan chapters I reviewed last year. There was their perspective on it, where the Sunlight Tree Eve, the top of the tree, is actually growing in the basement of Marie Joie, like Castle Pangea, right? So it goes up through the red line, and then it's right there, and it's actually the Devil Fruit Tree. It's actually where all the Devil Fruits come from, is the Sunlight Tree Eve. It's not a bad idea, because the Sunlight Tree is definitely existing on the ocean floor, and then the red line's right above Fishman Island, and then Marie Joie's right at the top of the red line. So, it could be that. And the way the Sunlight Tree works is that it absorbs sunlight and warmth and energy from the sun on the surface through the mangrove trees like the Sabaody Archipelago and all the other locations, and then that sunlight is instantly transported, kind of like an electric wire, like kind of like a cable, right down into the ocean depths, which is how Fishman Island can exist, and there's sunlight and there's warmth down there, even though it's like 10,000 meters below sea level, and it should be dark and cold, and there should really be no way that life can really thrive down there, but through the Sunlight Tree, it's able to, okay? So that's very interesting. Let's talk about kanji really quick. I'm going to put on the glasses for this one. All right, so simply put, the kanji for tree, ki, and the kanji for forest is mori. I like that. Those are my favorite kanji, like those like beginner level kanji, because it's like tree, all right, and the kanji looks like a tree, very simple, and then forest, mori, is just a bunch of trees. I love that. That's cute. I like that. But more specifically here, breaking it down here, this is the kanji that makes up the treasure tree. This kanji literally just translates out to treasure tree. So first off, the kanji on the left is ho, which means treasure. Okay, makes sense. And then the second kanji, you notice that's not the kanji for tree that I just showed you. It's still, for the kun reading, which by itself, it's still read as ki, or gi, depending on the context. But in this situation, the kanji is in the own reading, which is combined with another kanji, so it's ju. So ho-ju, and then that's the term treasure tree, hoju, okay? And so that kanji also means tree, but in the sense of like lumber or wood, rather than a tree itself, okay? So it's hoju adamu, and that's treasure tree Adam. The jewel tree Adam is the English version of that in like the dub. But so there's that, which is interesting in and of itself. But then we get to the Sunlight Tree Eve, which it uses this kanji. So once again, the kanji on the right is the same kanji from before, ju, which means wood or lumber. Okay, makes sense. But yo comes from this kanji, which means sunshine, daytime, praise the sun. Also means Escanor in other languages from what I hear. But here's the interesting part, okay? That kanji yo, so yo-ju ivu is how you would say it. But that kanji yo can also be read as the yang principle. yang, as in yin, yang. Yang representing positivity, yin representing negativity, as like that big duality that exists in the universe, right? Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's anything in particular, or that's the reference that Oda's going for, because kanji, of course, always have a lot of different meanings and stuff. He could have just simply been going with sunshine, daytime, and that's, you know, what it does, so that's what he named it as. But the reference to yang, to that duality, exists there too. And considering this is Oda we're talking about here, and considering the fact that literally the setup here is Fishman Island on the bottom of the ocean under the Red Line, where it's the only place these fishmen and merfolk can exist in peace and harmony without being turned into slaves out there in the world. Like, that is their homeland. And then right on the opposite end of that Red Line, if you go all the way up, you got Marijois, the place that is awash in decadence and abject luxury, and the celestial dragons live there, and there's slaves that are literally running their country. Literally polar opposites on opposite ends of this, of the Red Line. You got that, all right? And it's all tethered, connected, possibly by, well, the Red Line certainly, but also possibly by Eve, all right? And then you have it called the Yoju, which means like daytime, but also can mean yang. So it's like that represents the positivity, and then the opposite side of that, Marijois, represents the yin, the negativity balance in the universe. I told you this discussion about trees would have been freaking awesome! Did I not promise you that from the outset? I don't think I did, but now I am, okay? So, trees. I talked for 23 minutes about trees. I mean, yes, there are some other trees. Like I said, the tree of knowledge. I would have liked to know a little bit more about that. You know, what kind of tree was it? You know, do trees just, if you just keep letting them grow for 5,000 years in the One Piece world, naturally get to the size of, like, mountains? Because that tree of knowledge was massive, right? It was filled, it was a giant library, and, like, they had an observation deck in there, and a basement and everything. That tree was massive, right? Also, I just want to throw this out there. Yes, Ohara was Buster called. It was bombed into oblivion. Yes, the Tree of Knowledge did fall down. What about the roots of that thing? That tree was huge, and the roots were probably also equally huge, and it had been growing for 5,000 years. So would you not think that the roots of that thing, and they even confirmed there was a basement, because that's where they were studying the poneglyphs in secret, the scholars of Ohara, like Clover and everybody, and they had to keep it out of the way of the world government and everything like that. And plus, Ohara was literally known as, like, the bastion of knowledge and secrets in the One Piece world, okay? It was the greatest library that existed. So you know the world government was watching that place for long before Spondine showed up, long before Akainu issued the Buster Call. The government was watching that damn island, right? So you know the government would stop by probably once a month, maybe once every few weeks, and be like, hey, Clover, we're just gonna have a look around your library. So they had to make sure to keep everything secret, and if you have a giant tree that's your home base of operations, and there's a basement to this freaking operation, they're gonna be the roots of the damn tree. So, and this only happened 20 years ago when Ohara was burned down. So yes, the roots would eventually wither and die, but this tree is so damn old that it's like, you know, the tree falls down, crack. The roots might still be able to survive as like a secret basement if they were reinforced, certainly under Ohara. They might still be there to this day. I also like to think that, and a lot of people on Ohara, all the scholars, they were killed by Akainu when he ordered the destruction of that vessel, right? I like to think, though, weren't there other scholars of Ohara scattered all over the world? They wouldn't have all been there at once. You know, they would have been out there in the world. They're archaeologists. They're studying the world and learning about it. And they're arbologists. They're studying trees and stuff out there in the world, right? Maybe Heracleson, the famous botanist, was from Ohara. Who knows? All sorts of technology and knowledge coalesce there. So, after the Buster Call, other Oharan scientists and scholars were like, hey, our homeland was destroyed. Do you think they got the basement? Maybe. And so now we got Attack on Titan kind of territory, where they probably wait a few years after the island was obliterated. They can't go back right away. and I'm sure the government probably has, like, you know, stay out, keep out, government property, you're not allowed to go near Ohara, but maybe somebody, like a survivor of Ohara, could have gone back there in the West Blue and, like, found a secret trapdoor into the basement, like, they don't know about this, and then they go down, and it's like, oh, thank God, you know, they destroyed so many books upstairs in the Tree of Knowledge, but at least these are the most important books that tell you about poneglyphs and everything, and the secrets of the world. All the stuff we've scrapped together about the ancient kingdom still exists, still slumbers beneath Ohara. That would be pretty cool, right? That's Ohara. We got the Whale Tree, of course, which houses the poneglyphs. See? Oda's doing something with this. Sunlight Tree Eve. There was a poneglyph on Fishman Island. There was actually a road poneglyph, too, but we don't know what happened to it. Ohara had poneglyphs. They had a poneglyph in that tree. Zou! They had a road poneglyph. Where was it? In the tree! Look at the trees. Don't pay attention to the giant dragon duck god. Don't pay attention to Nami's boobs. Pay attention to the trees. The trees will lead you to all sorts of information. Yeah. Okay, so, there's some other trees that exist. I mean, we already talked about the mangrove trees and stuff, but, you know, I'm sure you could tell me about some other trees that exist in One Piece. Remember that one tree with the swing on? No, that was Naruto. That was the tree in Naruto. Yeah, outside the Ninja Academy where the swing of loneliness. It's just like, yes, all kids that don't have any friends go and report to the swing of loneliness. That means you, Naruto. Okay. You know, so that's the swing of loneliness. Let's see. I'm trying to go through all the major arcs here. Gaimon's Island had a lot of trees. There was a lot of trees there. During the flashback at Gray Terminal, during Luffy and Sabo and Ace's flashback, where they keep all their money inside of a tree. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not going to go through every single arc and be like, was there a tree of relevance in Whiskey Peak? No. Was there a tree of relevance in Alabasta? No, I'm not going to go through every single arc, but you could probably point out a few trees of relevance that exist in the One Piece world. But yeah, before I leave this riveting video, does anybody have any good tree stories? Any good stories about trees? Doesn't have to be a round focused on a tree, but it could just be like, yeah, one time I went out to go get a burrito, and I walked into a tree. I'm like, there you go. That's a story. There you go. I have one, kind of. When I was a little kid, also there was a tree that grew in our backyard, and it's not there anymore. And when I was a little kid, it was really, really old. Like, this tree was kind of, like, rotted and stuff. I remember one time my dad, he took, like, this black tar shit, and he was, like, painting the side of the tree with it. It was like a sealant or something, but it looked like tar. And I was like, why are you painting the tree? And he was, because I'm, like, a little kid, and he's just like, sealing it in or like protecting it or something. I don't remember, but he was like painting the side of the tree with this stuff. And one year, kind of like similar to this year, we had a really bad winter and we had ice storms and stuff, and it got really cold once. And the tree split right down the middle in the middle of the night and cracked and fell over and almost broke my window. It wasn't quite tall enough to smash my window, but like the branches and stuff like slammed into my window and it woke me up in the middle of the night. There's like this whole tree just crashing next to my my window there. So then we cut it down the following week. So yeah, there's my tree story. Let me know about yours in the comment section down below. Yep.